Thank God it's Friday, so it's time to do business on Friday. That's Friday business for 55 minutes. And here's what we have prepared for you on the program today. Egypt's central bank is auctioning 50 billion of Egyptian pounds in T-bills. Close a bond between South Africa and China. Now South Africans can directly access their products. And in Zimbabwe, the government there is targeting 3.2 million tons of cereals for sales. Good to have you on Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John McCall. We start from the global space to do business. Oil prices ease for a third day on Friday, and we're on track for a fall for the week as investors are focusing on expectations from increased output from Libya. And then there's a broader OPEC Plus group also they're releasing some products from there, although fresh stimulus from top importer China limited some of those losses, or the drop would have seen in the price of oil. So for see 20 cents off the price of Brent at $71.40 a barrel. That's 0.28%, while it's lower than that, I believe, just about 14 cents for WTI, and that equals 0.21%. $67.53 a barrel. And yes, we did tell you that on a weekly basis, Brent crude was set to shed 4%, while WTI is on track to lose 6%. Meanwhile, rival factions staking claims for control of the central bank in Libya have signed an agreement to end their dispute. And then the dispute had caused a sharp reduction in oil production and exports in the country. About 400,000 barrels were affected, and we hope that would come back into the stream. So that expectation is what is driving down price. Also, we see the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies, as OPEC Plus, they're currently cutting oil output by a total of 5.86%. That's supposed to drive price up, but we haven't seen that yet, and there are plans to reverse 180 basis points of those cuts by December. Still in the global space now, let's look at metals. Gold and silver prices retreated on Friday from record highs, but were positioned for weekly gains on growing anticipation of another bumper U.S. interest rate cut this year. We had the first one, remember, 50 basis points. Now, let's look at the numbers. Spot gold unchanged, $2,673.21. U.S. gold also unchanged. They seem to have made up their minds after so much excitement around that 50 basis point cut on interest rate by the Fed. Spot silver was down 0.3%, $31.93 per ounce. Platinum also down $1,001.54 after dropping 0.6%. And palladium also in the red, 1.1%, $1,035.75 per ounce. That's what we have for the metals at this time. I remember that the Federal Reserve's larger than usual 0.5 percentage point reduction last week ignited a rally in gold, which hit consecutive record highs and has gained about 1.8% so far this week. Now, leaving the metals, now data released by, that's in Nigeria, Major Energies Marketers Association of Nigeria, suggests that landing costs of premium motor spirits, that's petrol, has dropped to 981 per litre. The petrol landing cost of about 1,130 in previous weeks came down by over 140 naira as of September 25, 2024. Because of the drop in the global crude oil prices, which we told you earlier, where crude oil price and the foreign exchange rate are the major factors that determine the cost of refined petroleum products, including petrol, diesel, aviation fuel, kerosene, and others. Brent, the global benchmark for crude, traded above an average of 80. That has been the normal, but in the last couple of weeks, we've seen that it has not been able to hit that, and so we've seen it trade below $80. Now, oil companies' indebtedness to the Federation account has risen to $6.175 billion. That's according to an audit of the petroleum industry by the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, that's NETI. The breakdown of the amount shows $6.01 billion and $66.4 billion in unpaid royalties and gas flare penalties owed to the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission as at August 31. The oil and gas industry reports presented in Abuja also revealed a 9% drop in industry's revenue in 2023, with $16.467 billion recorded compared to $18.106 billion in 2022. At the same time, the report says that the outstanding petroleum profit taxes, company income taxes, withholding taxes, and VAT owed to the Federal Inland Revenue Service amounted to $21.926 billion and 492.8 million naira as of June 2024. Well, maybe we'll soon be seeing those numbers in naira. Remember that the federal government has hinted that perhaps most of those charges will now be in naira, but I mean, it hasn't been affirmed yet, so we'll see how that goes. Now, we come to Lagos State, where the government has created a somewhat replica of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, you know, the one led by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, and it's to curb the complaints of multiple taxation as well as widen the tax net in the state. The special advisor to the governor on taxation and revenue, Mr. Abdulkadir Ogungbo, who was a guest on Business Morning, says that harmonization efforts are ongoing.
The essence of that team is to ensure that we reduce in alignment with what the federal government is thinking about to a single-digit revenue, so that we don't further, stress the already stressed businesses and the likes. So, and what we're doing around that, the instruction is that we ensure that we put all the revenues that looks very similar, like we're starting with the hospitality business, for instance, in ensuring that we reduce the number of revenue that they pay into a singular and more, accessible form. So we can tell you in a number of weeks, you'll be seeing the result of trying to reduce some of these and ensuring that end-to-end engagement is ongoing to ensure that local government, state government, and federal government aligns in what each person's collect. Because currently what we have is that there is established taxes and levies approved list for collection act, which gives each of these tiers of government what revenue to collect. So most of the time, we see some form of perception that looks like it's an overlap.
That's right. The United Nations General Assembly meeting is still ongoing, but drawing to a close, the 7th and 9th edition. And of course, we've been giving you updates right here on Channels Television, mostly from the public sector. Now, let's get close to the private sector, see their representation there, and see perhaps what they have gained from the meetings that have been going on for about a week now and coming to an end, I guess, this weekend. We have joining us from New York and who has been participating in the meetings, the Chief Executive Officer of BMO Advisory Services. She's also a board member at Wema Bank. That's Bola Matel Oko. Hi, Bola, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, it's a good morning from you.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's a good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
bright and early too.
Yeah, we got you up earlier than you would have. So how has it been, the meetings, the interactions? We've seen a lot going on in the government side. We've been following our vice president, who is representing the president. We saw the solid minerals meeting yesterday. But for you as a private sector right there, how has it been?
It's been a revelation, honestly. You know, as an executive coach, I always say that awareness is the first step in solving any problem. And what this week has done for me is create a high sense of awareness about the position that Africa is as regards so many things that we're trying to focus on, whether we're talking about sustainable development and financing, peace and security, or a digital future for all youth and future generations, global governance. And what I've been able to take away is that it will take a collective effort, you know, because many times we feel like government is the one that has to do anything. But for me, as a private citizen, I am coming away with a sense of responsibility. One of the events that I attended that was really impactful was at the Harvard Club. I think this was on Wednesday, that focused on the International Foundation for Valuing Impacts. And they talked about risk, reward, and impact. And for me, as a private individual that also has a business, it really set me thinking about the things I can do in my business to be able to create systems that are more sustainable, because it's going to take a collective effort, like I said, for us to save and preserve the climate. And also yesterday I attended a wonderful event, WIPIA. It was the launch of the Women in Philanthropic and Impact, and it was really very, very inspiring to see women really be in the forefront of trying to lead the charge for change. And Africa as a continent, we are blessed. One of the speakers on the panel spoke about how 60% of the resources for sustainable renewable energy, which is solar, is on the African continent. And so for me, I see opportunities, because when you are aware of problems, it also creates opportunities. And one of the things that Ms. Awoshika said also at the event in Harvard, she talked about how as a continent, we may start slow, but we have so many resources when you talk about human capital. So we might start slow, but we have the advantage of catching up and even, getting ahead. And so this is a challenge to us as a country and individually to begin to recognize not just the problems, but to see the solutions and profile solutions and work with government to be able to create a more sustainable planet for everyone.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, Bola, I don't think we lack the talk on solutions. You talk to government, you talk to the private sector. Everybody knows what we should be doing to explore the potentials which we are so used to. But I wonder if there's a way to kickstart it, because that's where it seems there's a gap. So we know what we're supposed to do, but actually doing it is another.
So I always say, because I'm a leadership coach, and I always say that one of the problems we have in not just Nigeria, but in Africa is not a problem of resources. We are a blessed continent. It's about leadership. And when I talk about leadership, it is the ability to inspire the populace to see themselves as stakeholders in what is going on. Because when you feel detached from a problem, when you feel like it's not my problem, it does not affect me, it's really very difficult for you to get involved in trying to get a solution. But if you see yourself as a stakeholder, and I think this is an effort that must start from the grassroots, we must begin to talk about these values. For me, I'm a bit more conscious now about whether it's the power that I consume, whether it's trying to recycle plastic, or it's just trying to put in more sustainable systems in my business. So we really need to put in place a system that would educate people. There's this saying that ignorance is bliss, and nothing could be further from the truth. Ignorance can be very, very costly. Somebody said, people say education is expensive. Try ignorance. So I think that we must really be committed to the process. We must set up structures that would really take it upon themselves to start to educate and execute these plans, because we know what to do. You are so very correct. We know what to do. So it's not a matter of not knowing what to do. It's about execution. And that's where we really have to rise up to the challenge at this point.
Yeah, well, I hope we do very soon as a continent, not even just as Nigeria. Now, we've seen MOU signed. We saw with the government and the private sector. For you, what would you say is your major take-home as this meeting comes to a close?
So I didn't hear you. It was a bit muffled.
Okay,
can you repeat the question?
So I'm asking, what's your major benefit or gain by the time you look back through all the meetings and going back home from Monga?
like I said, it takes one person to create change. And so for me as a person, I have not that I've never had the awareness, I have a keener awareness. And I'm inspired to be that one person that would create change. And how do I do it? I start in my organization. And once I start in my organization, then I can begin to also influence other people to begin to imbibe these values. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, it is going to take a collective effort for us to be able to not only become a continent that not just has resources, but we actually are a player on the international stage. So for me, I feel a sense of investment in this in the process at this point, which I can't necessarily say I had before I went to New York. So it's really been a learning experience for me, and I'm really, really committed to the process more than ever before.
All right, yeah. But I'm going to tell your colleagues and, everyone around you to watch out for you implementing that.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many ideas that are bubbling in my head, and honestly, I can't wait to begin to execute some of these ideas, because I know that when we begin to rise up to our potential, we will be a force to be reckoned with in the international stage.
All right, thank you so much, and we really wish you the best in executing those ideas. Bola Marteloko is the Chief Executive Officer of BMO Advisory Services and a board member at Wema Bank. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's take a break now. After the break, we'll head to the markets with Anita Edits to stay with us. Welcome back. Still watching Business Incorporated right here on Channels Television. We'll head to the markets now for intraday numbers with Anita Edits. Anita, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Yesterday, yes, you talked about the markets, and of course, there's no change from what you had mentioned yesterday, where it was down. It lost about 266.5 billion.
That's almost all we have gained this week.
Exactly.
That's sad.
On Wednesday, it was 0.42%, and yesterday was a 0.47% pullback. But look at it at intraday. Yesterday, this number is not too changed from what we had yesterday.
Yeah, it's almost, because it was 98,500.
Yes, 523.56. But this number is still changing, and let's just
see how the market closes. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Okay, so now let's take a look at the broader picture of major continental indexes for stock markets around the African continent. Like we talked about, Nigeria's all-share index, 98,509.65. That's the last track that we had for the market at intraday number 0.01%, and that's just at the glance at intraday market. For the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, 0.17%, intraday 87,477.50, and that number is still climbing. Most likely that number might cross into the 90,000 points. But let's just take a look at how the month of September, which was coming to an end on Monday, I will turn out for both of these markets. But for Nigeria's stock market, we'll look out for how Friday's session would end. And now for the other sides of the African continental indexes, 31,276.91. That's for the EGX 30 for the close of Thursday's trading session. Most of the countries around the Middle East, and EGX is not too far from the Middle East, but we still call it on the African continent. So it closed for Thursday's session in the green, 0.08%. And for the Nairobi Stock Exchange, the all-share index was down 0.35% for Thursday at 107.11. And now let's turn our attention to the fixed income market. Yesterday we saw, first for the treasury bills, it was a bearish sentiment, while for the bonds market, it was calm there. Average yield remained unchanged at 18.6% for the bonds market. And then for the treasury bills, we saw average yield expanding there by 11 basis points to 21.9%. But now let's talk about the broader picture. Third quarter is almost coming to an end for both the markets as well as for other sides of what you might mention. So, but we'll be taking a look at a broader overview of activities within the fixed income market. And we have Raymond Okpara, Senior Fund Analyst with Afrinvest West Africa, to give us details about that, as well as what to expect in the fourth quarter, which is coming up just sometime on Wednesday, on Tuesday to be precise. But for the financial markets, not just stock markets, the financial markets will be closed on October the 1st, which is our Independence Day. So the markets will open on Wednesday. So now let's bring in Raymond Okpara to tell us more details about the third quarter activities. Thank you for joining us, Raymond.
Thank you so much for having me once again, Anita.
Okay, so now let me mention first, we had the third quarter of 2024 has had a flurry of activities. One, let me mention the domestic dollar bond sale, the monthly FGN bond sales, the monthly FGN savings bond sale, the bi-weekly treasury bills auction, the impact of, we had 2 central bank monetary policy decisions, 2 interest rate hikes just in this quarter, and also we've also had the return of the Dutch auction system by the central bank. How has all of this impacted on the fixed income market and investor sentiment?
Okay, thank you so much. Just like you said, Q3 was there was a lot of activity in Q3 from monetary policy side to the, DMO auctioning its first ever dollar bond auction to, markets returning to the Dutch system. So just starting from the dollar bond sale, what we saw in Q3 was that the DMO successfully auctioned its first ever dollar bond, and it attracted strong interest from investors, to the tune of over $900 million. While we understand that this dollar bond shares similarity with Euro bond, we are here to highlight the advantages for both governments and investors. On the government side, the government is more like broadening its investment options and catering to a variety of investors, ranging from the investors' investment size to tenors. You understand that the dollar-denominated bond allows investors with a requirement of $10,000 compared to Euro bonds, which is much higher at a $50,000 to $100,000 threshold for investors. We also understand that the dollar bond has these other characteristics where due to the liquidity of that market being its first ever bond, this reduced market exposure compared to, the Euro bond, and all in all provides the government from a more diversified borrowing approach. And just like you mentioned also, the bond market and T-bills market, recorded a bearish momentum for the quarter, although coming from July ended bearish up to August, where mid-August we saw a bullish turn. But all in all, CBN's hands were clear on direction. Just like you mentioned, CBN's meetings in July and September, they issued a total of 100 basis points, across these 2 meetings. And, the MPC, led by Dr. Yemi Cardoso, acknowledged a deceleration in inflation throughout the tightening cycle, although he has highlighted that core inflation still remains very hot. We'll be expecting further hikes from the CBN, over the course of the fourth quarter. We'll understand, the factors that have inflected inflation and what the CBN intends to do to rein in inflation so far. But so far, we understand that CBN has done, continued hiking. And for the next inflation numbers, while we understand that there has been some positive on inflation, there's some supply side disruptions, ranging from the flooding in Maiduguri to some other pass-through costs, from the rising energy prices. Well, we don't expect, these factors to outweigh, a moderation. We expect a moderation in inflation, largely stemming from, the base effects that we've seen. And inflation should trend closer to the CBN's target at the end of the month. How this has affected markets is very, very important. CBN has always, from previous administrations, there have been arguments on the transmission mechanism because, while MPR will be raised on one hand, market rates would not show that, direction from the CBN. But CBN, this new administration led by Cardoso, has been able to use various tools, including the OMO and adjustments to asymmetric corridors to tighten liquidity. And what we're seeing is that this, bearish move, this hawkish sentiment from the CBN passed into OMO has also affected the Nigerian treasury market and in tandem the bonds market. But while we understand that these markets have peculiar factors, the NTB markets, for example, the rates there are more directly influenced by system liquidity. While the bonds markets might take a more stretched time because it's more characterized by broader fiscal factors such as government's borrowing strategy. But we've seen how the central bank has communicated its hockey stance through its tools, through to markets, and markets have priced that efficiently. We saw a bullish turn in August, but that didn't last because inflation still remains very hot, and CBN is here to tell us high interest rates will remain for a longer period of time.
Okay, Raymond, I think because of time, we just have to leave it there. But next week, we will be talking about, when we start in the fourth quarter, we'll be talking about the yield environment, where, how the sentiments, there's going to be a fourth quarter issuance calendar for the bonds market, for the treasury bills markets, as well as other markets within the fixed income market. But thank you so much for your time, and we look out for the Q4 expectations coming from next week, Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you for having me.
That was Raymond Akpara, Senior Fund Analyst at AfriInvest West Africa, giving us details of the fixed income market and how it turned out for the third quarter of this year. Now, let's turn our attention to the Middle East market. Well, these are the only two markets that traded for Friday, the Dubai and the Abu Dhabi, both of them on the United Arab Emirates, and both of them in the red territory, 0.16%. For the Dubai index, and the Abu Dhabi 0.46% intraday numbers. And there's no, there's the outlook for this market is going to be in the red because there's so much of profit taking. Oil prices are also down, and other factors which has to do with profit taking and investors' caution. Now, let's turn our attention next to the US market, where we see that the stock futures were flat ahead of key inflation data due to be released any minute from now, about 1:35, 1:40 Nigerian time. But the Dow Jones Industrial Average 0.10% for the futures, the S&P 500 0.17%, and the Nasdaq futures 0.35%. So before the opening bell, 2:30 Nigerian time, we would see how these numbers would turn out. But in terms of expectation, traders are waiting the release of the August Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, what you call the PCE, and that's the primary gauge used by the Fed to gauge inflation. And policymakers and Wall Street are hoping that the figures will show a cooling trend. Already, economists are expecting that the headline PCE it rose by about 2.3% annualized, and that it gained, but that is just an expectation, so we'll look out for that official number. At the same time, personal income and spending data will be released alongside the PCE figures. So that's it for the US market. But for an overview of how Thursday's trading session ended, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird.
The U.S. stock market jumped on Thursday as the Dow Jones was up at 0.6%, the S&P 500 up at 0.4%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq up at 0.62%. This was a record-setting day for the S&P 500 as all the major indices showed a positive uptick. Many investors are watching to see what will happen over the next weeks and days ahead, as the GDP growth was stronger than Wall Street expected. This has had many hopeful that the U.S. economy will be on an uptick and that there could be more interest rate cuts before the end of the year.
That's our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, with the numbers from Wall Street for the close of Thursday's trading session. And finally, the market that we have on our radar is the Asian markets, where we see Chinese stock markets, the Chinese indexes, because we have about 3 of them there, the Shanghai Composite, the CSI. Most of the markets were in the green territory. We see, first of all, China's market, they clocked the best week in almost 16 years. That's since 2008. And this is because the rally, it comes on the back of earlier this week, where we saw the People's Bank of China announcing stimulus measures as well as cutting the reserve repurchase rate to about 1.5%, down from 1.7%, and also slashed the reserve requirement ratio of financial institutions by 0.5 percentage points. But take a look at here. the Nikkei has tried to come back to that level, which it had gained sometime around July. It had reached about 40,000. That's because that's before the Bank of Japan announced an interest rate decision, which erased almost all of the gains that the markets had recorded. But so far, the market was up 2.3%, and this is coming at the same time that the country's headline inflation rate eased to about 2.2%, down from 2.6% recorded in August. So the September inflation was lower compared to August, but 39,829.56, that's the number for the Nikkei 225. Is South Korea's Kospi index down 0.82%. Hang Seng index, wow, 3.11%. That's one of the biggest gainers there. And then for the other sides of the market, where we talked about Shanghai 2.88%, and India's Nifty 50 down 0.09%. That's for the close of Friday's trading session. So all eyes will be looking out for the U.S. primary inflation numbers, which will be coming out anytime from now. And this reaction we'll be seeing from Monday. So that's it for the markets for the close and for intraday of Friday.
Thank you so much, Aniti. We hope to get that inflation number before the program is over, hopefully.
I'll get you that number.
All right, thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, now let's go to Berlin, where it's bad news for Germany because analysts have lowered the expectations for Europe's largest economy. Let's get the details now from Lars Holter with Deutsche Welle, and he joins us from Berlin. Hi, Lars. So what should we know about this latest report?
Thanks for having me, Ini. Yes, it's definitely some bad news towards the end of the week here. Let me just quickly go through some numbers. For this year, economists are expecting the economy to decline by 0.1% compared to a previous estimate of 0.1% growth. Then for the next 2 years, expectations are for very modest GDP growth of 0.8 and 1.3%. Again, that is both weaker than earlier projections. All that comes at a time we're not seeing much activity here anyway. Last year, German GDP was down 0.3%, and many had hoped or better expected a quicker way out of the doldrums. Instead, for this year, I would say stagnation is the most generous description of what we're really seeing. Of course, this is not very surprising. We've been dealing with some economic issues all year long, and just week we've seen an escalation in the auto industry, and that's the country's strongest sector. There, the weakness comes from higher prices, low export numbers, growing competition from abroad, and it's a similar picture for many other companies and entire business sectors.
So apart from these weaknesses, what else can we say is driving this negative report?
Well, let's take a closer look. As I just said, higher energy costs are definitely one factor we might as well start with. Energy prices are higher, partially because Germany had used Russian gas to power its industry for too long. And with Russia's war in Ukraine, we're no longer getting this resource and had to hurry to find alternatives. That's something we just heard also from German chemical giant BASF. No major company here uses more natural gas, and BASF says it's not doing well, and they're looking desperately to cut costs. But then we also have growing competition from China, which has been hurting German exporters. And I find this particularly interesting, the analysts are also partially blaming the German government for the current problems. They say that the three-party coalition's long arguing over next year's budget, and that some general political uncertainty too, have both worried corporations and households, and that it has only led to even lower spending and investing.
All right, so what about investors? What are they looking at today?
Well, I guess we can't really talk about markets without starting in China. Once more, markets there have seen their best week now in 16 years after all these stimulus measures that we've discussed over the last couple of days as well. We're seeing the two important blue chip indices up 12 and 15%. But the question is, of course, will it hold? After the weekend now, markets in China will be closed for a full week due to the National Day holiday there. We don't see breaks that long in other countries, but in China, they're indeed off for an entire week. After that, we will see how sustainable recent gains will have been. Here in Germany, markets are upbeat again today, even though there's two more profit warnings out from the auto industry suppliers. So we will likely be heading into some rough territory there. But towards the end of the week, for now, markets are doing fine.
All right, Lars, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. All right, now let's come back to the African continent at this time. And we're starting from Zimbabwe, where the government has mobilized inputs and resources to achieve a target of 3.274 thousand tons of grains in the upcoming season. They're aiming to rebuild food reserves after a difficult harvest last year caused by the El Nino drought. The government is planning for a surplus of at least 33% to replenish reserves and enhance food security, with forecasts of reasonable rainfall in the 2024-2025 season. The government is focusing on productivity gains to recover from the poor harvest of 744,271 tons in the previous season. The Permanent Secretary for Lands, Agriculture and Fisheries, Water and Rural Development, Professor Obert Jiri, emphasizes that rising cereal production targets were necessary to address the country's food security needs, particularly in the face of climate challenges like frequent droughts. And then we go to north of Africa, that's Egypt, where Egypt is expected to produce more wheat in 2024-2025 as the government encourages an increased planted area and higher yields. And this according to a report from the Foreign Agricultural Service of the United States Department of Agriculture. Production is estimated at 9.2 million tons. That's up from 8.87 million tons a year earlier. High government procurement prices also have encouraged farmers to plant more wheat. Wheat imports are estimated at 12.5 million tons, and that's up 11.4% from the previous estimate, but the same as 2023-2024. We're still in Egypt, where the central bank of that country is offering 50 billion Egyptian pounds in treasury bills in coordination with the Ministry of Finance. The auction will be in two tranches, 182-day T-bills worth 30 billion pounds to be matured in October in the 1st of March 2025, and the 364-day T-bills worth 20 billion pounds, which will mature September 30, 2025. Treasury bills are short-term government debt instruments with maturities ranging from 3 months to 1 year. And we'll still see what's going on in Egypt. We're still in Egypt as the Egyptian Engineering Export Council has announced a significant 27.3% increase in the sector's exports from January to August. And that hits a historic high of $3.494 billion. The council's monthly report indicates that engineering exports in August saw a 12.1% increase compared to the same month in 2023, reaching $443.6 million this August, and that's up from $395.8 million at the same time last year. The Engineering Export Council highlights several sectors that experienced growth in exports during the first 8 months of 2024, including transportation, cables, automotive components, electrical and electronic industries, home appliances, electrical appliances as well. Now, that's a relationship between South Africa and China. The 8th China Home Live South Africa is currently underway in Johannesburg, South Africa. And this year's edition is showcasing over 500 suppliers with 800 booths displaying nearly 14,000 products. And that represents opportunity for South African importers to directly access products from Chinese manufacturers.
Africa's large and growing population offers a substantial market for Chinese goods and investment. Now in its 8th year, China Home Life South Africa brings together importers and suppliers in one location. The event is organized by Binu Pillay, COO of Marriott International Exhibition.
So I think we are kind of maintaining a similar size, plus or minus 10 or 15%, I would say. We have about 350 exhibitors this year. Last year, we probably had about 320.
The Chief Executive Officer of Volt High Tech Solutions South Africa, Kathy Shilova, says China-South Africa relations is vitally important.
So South Africa and China, they enjoy a very great relationship. As you know, the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, actually government of South Africa and some of our business in South Africa, they were in China forging different relationships.
Meanwhile, Vincent Yongdong from Wenzhou Yongdong Machinery shares the same sentiments.
Okay, I'm a businessman, so Africa is very good market. Everything. I see young people on every street.
Economist Magwema Silela believes China's increasing exports to Africa can have several disadvantages for the continent.
As a country or a continent buying a lot of things from other countries or continents, it means that that particular country that you are buying from, in this instance, if say it's China, that Africa is buying a lot of things from them, it means China itself, its economy is growing in the sense that those people that are selling stuff to us, it means they've created the necessary jobs.
Meanwhile, trade analyst Viwe Nchongwana had this to say.
Chinese goods are made relatively cheaply and enter the African market cheaply. They flood or tend to flood certain African markets, undercutting certain similar goods that have been manufactured in Africa, and that undercutting reduces the demand of the similar goods that have been manufactured in Africa.
This ongoing dialogues about the benefits and risks of such partnerships is essential as Africa navigates its economic future. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simos, Channels Television News.
Thank you so much, Innocent, for sending in that report. Now, as promised, Anita has sent in the United States inflation, U.S. core PCE index, which just came out a couple of minutes ago. And we see that it's up 0.1% in August, and it is expected to be 0.2%. So that means it's better than was expected. Previous value was 0.2%. And this suggests that inflationary pressures are reducing in the country. So it may be a reality, that expectation that there'll be more interest rate cuts. I wonder how deep the cuts will be this time. I mean, we saw that 50 basis points cut, which was more than was expected. I wonder if we could do 75 this year. That would be a whole lot. But I mean, this just suggests that most likely there will be another interest rate cut by the Fed this year, following this indication that inflationary pressure are easing in the United States. So they're easing in Nigeria, but we cannot afford a cut yet. At least that's what the MPC, CBN's MPC told us during the last meeting. We'll wait for our time and keep working towards it. Now let's go to the crypto space and see what's happening there. Some interesting news also coming even from the United States. But first, let's see the number. Very green. I wonder if the market priced in some of that data. You know, the crypto market is very excited about data that comes from the United States. So I wonder if this is a driver, even though we've seen that Bitcoin has been on a good run, a bull run for a couple of days now, since it went up from that below 60, it's been surging. So for this afternoon, it's up a full 3%, 65,806.32 is the number. Of course, other coins will follow suit. Ethereum, 2,662. After it gained almost 1.5%, Solana also green, XRP, Cardano, LTC, AVAX almost green all through, just touch of red. That's what we're seeing. But let's see the headlines at this time. That story that the United States has cracked down on Russian crypto exchanges that are linked to illicit operations. Where they said that the United States government took this decisive action against 2 Russian nationals and 2 cryptocurrency exchanges involved in alleged illicit financial activities linked to Russia. We know Russia and the U.S. have not been friends. So whether it's illicit or not, I'm sure something would have gone down there. Well, the crackdown involved multiple agencies, including United States Treasury Department, the Department of Justice, the Department of State, in partnership with overseas law enforcement bodies. That's one story in the crypto space. The other one is still coming from the United States, where the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission reaffirms that Bitcoin is not categorized as a security, that investors now have opportunity to express their positions on Bitcoin through ETF products, and they refrain from talking about Trump and Bitcoin. But I mean, I know we will still get there. We'll talk about Trump, Bitcoin, and the election, because November is just around the corner. Well, the other issue, which I know is on your lip, is the issue of hamster. Yesterday, hamster combat listed, and I learned a lot of people were not so happy about the dust price that they saw. But let's find out what Rume Ofi thinks, and maybe he made some money. Hi, Rume. Good afternoon. Were you disappointed? Did you see this coming?
Good afternoon. Yesterday, the ETF got some huge amount of inflows, about 346 million. So it's showing confidence that the market is looking pretty well. Hoping for the best. But in trading, when people are excited, overly excited like this, or if there's greed, you need to sell into the greed, so that you're not caught red-handed. But I think crypto right now is making the wave, is the winner. It's going to be the super winner in the U.S. election coming up, because both candidates are actually routing for both crypto and blockchain technology. So we're hoping to see something good in the future, but in the short to medium term, I really don't think something big is going to come up, because if the all-time high comes this year, for example, you can imagine what would be next year. So I'm expecting maybe a downtime for some of us to get to buy from the lows, so that our bags become filled in a lower price, then see how far we can have the kumbaya moment in 2025. Yeah,
well, I appreciate that, Rume, but I was asking about the hamster combat, and the dot pricing that was noticed yesterday after that listing.
I didn't get you.
Hamster combat. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Rume? Oh wow!
Thank you, Ini.
It seems Rume cannot hear me. How unfortunate! I would have loved to get his take on the hamster combat. Obviously, yesterday everywhere was agog. Around me here, some individuals who have been engaged in all the tapping and efforts, and hoping to make some money out of that. Hello, Rume, can you hear me now?
You loud and clear now. I heard about tapping. The tapping thing is.
So I was asking Rume if we got
tapping thing is making sense, because it's bringing more people into the industry, which I'm very, very happy about. Most especially my brothers in the north. A lot of them are tapping and doing their stuff, And although we need to be careful to focus on our professional jobs while doing all of that, I think the adoption is moving. People are beginning to see the realities of cryptocurrencies, adoption. People are beginning to see that this is another industry that you need to pay attention to get passive income and also enjoy all of the benefits. I'm really loving it. Just tapping your phone and getting some of the airdrops, because some persons mistake it to be mining. That is not correct. It's an incentive, which we call airdrops. This now is a way where you just tap your phone and you get qualified for some numbers, and when it's being listed, you are being paid some amount in that particular cryptocurrency. Then if it's being listed on a big exchange, the value really goes up. The initiators of all of these, kudos to them. And maybe we'll see something better than this in the future, where more people could get in crypto. Nigeria is still recorded one of the highest now when it comes to stablecoin adoption. In the event done in Singapore, token 2049, it has been said that stablecoins are making headways in Nigeria. Now that we have licensing going on, a couple of things, we'll make the best use of this industry, of which I'm very proud that we're pioneers of this industry right now, and the present government is going to give more support for you to see the light of the day.
All right, Rume, thank you so much, and have a great weekend. So talking about that tapping, I don't know if you saw there was at the time a memo from a ministry from one of the ministries in the northern state of Nigeria trended, where workers were told they could not tap during working hours. So it gotten that much attention that it seems workers were getting distracted, pursuing the passive income. But we'll see what happens after this dust rising that we saw with hamster combat, if more people will still be encouraged to follow that route and see if they can still get some passive income from there. But anyways, that's it. Something new will always happen and people will always try to see how to maximize the opportunities in it. But that's how much we can do for this week. Thank you so much for being a part of our business programs, Business Morning, Business Incorporated, all through the week. We'll start to cycle again next week. And next week is really special. I'm sure you've seen that promo where we're having that special summit talking about Nigeria's economy fully on Tuesday, which is our Independence Day. You want to tune in, you don't want to miss it. 6 p.m. to 9:45 p.m. We'll explore all sides of the economy, and you could be a part of it, I guess. But thank you so much for being a part of it. Ladi Williams will be here 7 p.m. tomorrow. Capital Market, he will give you some tips, investment tips. But I'll see you next week. I'm John McQuarrie. Bye-bye.